So when we were inside, we just watched a video, and it's called Sharing the Secrets, done by the Southern Environmental Law Center. And the video basically talks to you about caves in Alabama. We've talked about geology already, and a part of the geology of this area is what type of rock?
Limestone.
Limestone. Okay. Did y'all know another name for limestone? It starts with a K. Karst. Okay, so my talk is about karst groundwater, or karst topography, and how groundwater moves through that. So my objective is at the end of this, you're going to understand and be able to take back to your classroom an understanding of how pollution impacts regular areas that don't have karst compared to how areas that have karst have a completely different impact whenever there's pollution. So does everybody understand kind of where we're going? Okay, the vocabulary that we're talking about, the first big word is karst, and y'all got that. That's limestone. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is wells. Okay, I'm not necessarily going to use all the labels that are on here for my purposes. There's a lot of different lessons you can do with a karst groundwater model. But with the wells, these are going to be things where I'm going to put stuff into it so you can watch what happens. So injection wells. So I'll put color in. And then over here, we've got the karst. We have a sinkhole. What's a sinkhole?
The place where the supportive material has been eroded.
Okay, so whatever's down in here has eroded away, and then what happens up here?
Collapses.
It collapses in. You see stories all the time where like a water main breaks inside a city and a city block starts to fall into the ground. Or there's places like Berry College where I went to school where they had the entire post office disappear and they had a lake go away overnight. Okay, and so then we're also going to talk about pumping wells, and y'all know what that is. That's like a city that pulls water from underground, or it could also be maybe you have a house and you have a well. So to start this, the first thing that you have to have is we all know that water underground doesn't just sit there, does it? Is water under our feet just staying perfectly still?
No.
What does it do?
Flowing down the gradient.
Flowing down gradient. Okay.
Perfect.
So if we're flowing down gradient, we're starting here where the mountains. Where's it eventually going to end up?
The lowest point where that is.
Where would the lowest point be?
Ocean.
Sea level.
Sea level. So the water that we have here is eventually going to end up at the sea level. How long is it going to take?
No science.
Could be
Do
quite
it.
a while.
You think a couple of weeks or quite a while? Anybody else have a guess?
It depends on what the substrate is made out of.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of rock it's flowing through. So it also depends on like what kind of environment it's in. So understand that in a lot of areas, there's like the granite rock. You remember whenever they talked about in the geography lesson? The rock can, that rock still has a little bit of porosity to it. So there's a little bit of water that can make it through that. It's going to take it a long time. Whereas limestone, what was the porosity of limestone?
Reactive.
Well, it's reactive to chemicals, but you remember what? Do y'all remember what porosity meant?
Pore size, or holes.
Like the holes in it. So limestone, was it more or less porous than granite? It was more. So do you think it allowed water to move faster or slower? Faster. Okay. So yeah, y'all are getting the idea here. Areas like this, we're in the Cumberland Plateau right now in northeast Alabama. I have to be careful because I live in northwest Georgia. But northeast Alabama, we're at the end of the Cumberland Plateau. And all of this, as you know, they talked about in the film, used to be a shallow sea floor. And all of that stuff that died, which is why when you're in caves you see fossils on the ceiling, that's what created the limestone. Is all of that dead sea life. And so as it moved up, and it's got the pressure and things like that, it changed forms as a part of the rock cycle. So at this point, I'm going to start off with something pretty simple. Because we've already talked about it. Alright, so that put some of this in. What are we going to expect to see happen with this?
Eventually it just dissipate into the.
Diffusion. follow the flow of the groundwater.
Ah, so you think it's going to follow the flow of the groundwater. So at this point, we've now established our groundwater is where? Groundwater is, like, you can see the line right here in our sinkhole. That's basically the line where our water is right now. I mean, it comes all the way over to here. That's our water table. Okay, and understand, we use so much water today that our water table is actually, in, like, I think this area is like 14 feet deeper than it used to be. That's what they were talking about. Because we're pulling so much water out of the ground. I have a friend that works with Edwards Aquifer out in Texas. The aquifer out there is dropping like nobody's business because in Texas they're pulling so much more out than can be replaced. So I know in Georgia our state standards talk about human impact on the environment, and we really try to get across to kids how we are impacting the environment. So how are we impacting the environment? Well, we're pulling water out from underground faster than when it can be replaced. So as teachers, we've got to figure out how to take that idea and help our kids understand it. And so like my environmental science class right now, I've been teaching them about water. And we're talking about how do you reduce your water use? And the kids had to brainstorm and come up with ways. When you're brushing your teeth, don't leave the water running. Some of them said, I take 30-minute showers twice a day. I'm like, holy crap, how many of you have that many hours in your day? But, you know, could you take a shower in 5 minutes? You know, try it. And so we started talking about how to cut back on our water usage so that we're not wasting water, because it's a renewable resource, but at the same time it's not really a renewable resource. If our groundwater is dropping, we're putting more of it into places we can't use it than we have left. Because if you think about it, 97% of the water is salt water, 3% is fresh water, and out of all of that, it's like 0.1% is actually water we have access to. That's not a whole lot. Alright, so at this point, I think I've talked long enough. You see the general movement of all of this from these 3 injection wells. All of my water has now moved going across this. Alright, well, I don't know, do y'all want a gas station or do you want a septic tank? Septic tank? Alright, well my house has a septic tank, and I'm going to be honest, I had to have it pumped out not so long ago because, well, they fill up. But one of the things that happens is whenever you have some kind of a tank and it has a leak, sometimes you start to have problems. So my septic tank isn't sealed and it's leaking. So what is this going to do? Okay, so I'm now contaminating groundwater. Alright, well, where I live, I've got a nice deep well. So ignore the red right now. Ignore the red showing you just where the water's moving to help you see it. But watch that green. So this is my drinking water. This is me pulling water out of the ground so that I have water inside my house to drink. What do y'all see happening? So all that bacteria that I'm flushing down the toilet, it's going straight towards my drinking water. It's almost there. Alright, so my water is just now starting to get polluted. You can't really tell it up here, but it's starting to pull green up. There it is. So this could be a gas station that has a gas tank that has a crack in the bottom of it because it's been in the ground so long. This could be a septic tank at your house or a neighbor's house. And there's a lot of people in Alabama who use well water. And this kind of topography right here is going to be more in like mid and southern Alabama. This isn't the Karst region. Up here it's completely different, and we're about to see that. But this is going to be more what you're going to see, in areas where you've got layers of rock, layers of clay, layers of sand and dirt, layers of shell, things like that. much more permeable because it's not necessarily rock. So far, are there any questions? What do you think, though?
Very good visual.
You think that's a good visual?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do.
Well, let's go ahead and make it a little bit better. Because this entire weekend, we've been focused on what? Caves. I like to go caving. This part of America, here in Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, we've got 15,000 something caves that people have actually turned into locations for. They're everywhere. So, there's plenty of places to go exploring. Why? Because we have karst topography. This is the perfect place for it. We've got limestone rock and carbonic acid, which is in rain as it falls, slowly erodes it away. It's taken millions of years for it to form. But, you know what? On that same token, hang on one second, let me put a little bit of water in my sinkhole. My sinkhole likes to get low a little bit sometimes. It takes a while for the water to filter back over. Alright, there we go. Make my water flow back through just like groundwater now. Alright, so in my karst region, what are your predictions? What's going to happen?
The ink is gonna show up in the caves,
It's going to show up in the caves?
slowly or quickly or. That's limestone, what up?
It's like quickly.
I don't know what they said about how fast it moves through.
Okay. But guess what? A lot of people around here have a well, don't they? They don't get city water. They live in the middle of nowhere. Watch. There it is. Right now, all of y'all, your mouths are hanging open. So,
Think about my well.
this sinkhole is pretty much the equivalent of a lot of the places I've helped clean up. Working with the SERA Karst Task Force, we've gone in and we've gone to places where there's sinkholes, and people, back in the 50s and 60s didn't really understand all of this. And what would they do? They saw a hole in the ground, they didn't like it in their yard. They would go out and throw their garbage in it, trying to fill it up.
Oh, Lord.
Well, a good rainstorm comes along, and guess what? That hole's right back where it started from. So they throw more trash in it, working on filling it up. And so there are historic trash dumps that have who knows what down in the ground because people back then didn't understand what was under their feet. They didn't understand all this. I mean, back in this time, like the 50s, that's really when caving kind of started taking off. Before that, they didn't have the technology to go in and explore and spend a long period of time underground. I mean, Native Americans went in and they used cane torches. But around the 50s, that's whenever, like the coal mining lights, those, battery-operated wheat lamps, that's when they started using those. But as you've seen, when I started pumping, what did you notice with the sinkhole too? What happened to the water? How fast? Yeah. The water table drops a whole lot faster. Because what flows in this area, when it hits the surface, immediately it's got all this open passage to flow through. A few weeks ago, I was over at Sinking Cove. It's one of the Southeastern Cave Conservancy properties, and it came a good thunderstorm. Well, you have to drive through a creek to get in and out. You better believe I started getting changed and told the boys to get in the car in a hurry. Why? Because I knew what was about to happen. The water started flowing down through there. It flowed through the caves, and all of a sudden there's a flow pulse that starts coming down through that little area. And it's because this region, the water goes into the caves, fills the caves up, and it it's all runoff. But the whole point of this was to help you understand. Over here, it's kind of this slow pattern. Also notice how dissipated it became. it wasn't like it was super fast. The pollution dissipates a little bit, which in places like Rome, Georgia, where the GE plant, where they used to make transformers, they would put PCBs in the ground. Well, we don't have karst in that spot. So it dissipated and spread out into the entire water table. So now they've got these pumping stations, and they're pumping water up, filtering it, trying to get PCBs out, and putting it back in the ground, and just trying to lower the concentration, because everything in the world wants homeostasis. It wants that balance. Think about diffusion. You put a drop of food coloring in a cup. I don't know if any of you've ever done that with your students.
From an area of high to low.
High concentration to low concentration. It wants to be equal. Well, that's what this was going to want. If I left this alone and I took away the flow, over time it's just going to start spreading out. It's going to start to become equal because there's more of these particles in one spot than others. So this is a slower process, but it can still have a negative impact. However, because Alabama is so diverse, all of northeast Alabama, this is it. This is it right here. So somebody throwing their oil into a pit after they change it, or just pouring it on the ground out in their yard, their well is right next to that. Or if their septic tank had a leak.
Like farmers that use pesticides.
Farmers that use pesticides, another good example. All of that immediately goes in. And one of the things we talked about in the film is caves are a closed ecosystem for the most part. We've got bats that bring in outside nutrients. We've got cave crickets that bring in outside nutrients. And other than that, it's the water that brings in nutrients. So the water that's coming in is polluted. That entire ecosystem inside a cave is destroyed. And those ecosystems have to stay balanced, or else they collapse. And a lot of the caves, they have species that are like very unique to them. There are some caves where you will find a species, and that is the only cave that species is known to exist. And all it takes is a farmer putting pesticide on his farm one time and a good rainstorm coming, and that could kill out an entire species of animal. So, throughout this entire workshop, some of the things that I want to go back and kind of recapture on is, we talked about the geology. This helps you understand how the geology of Alabama, well, northwest Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, it has areas like this, but it also has huge areas of this. Georgia is just kind of the northwest tip for the most part, but Tennessee, Cumberland Plateau comes all the way down into Alabama. The other thing, besides geology, is we talked about the photography. Nathan talked about, hey, the best photographer in a cave, the best camera to use in a cave is the camera you have. And in the film, you saw the camera that the lady was using. What was that? A little bitty point and shoot camera. She won a photo contest with the Southeastern Cave Conservancy for lighting up one of the biggest pits in Tag. It's 404 feet deep at Surprise Pit at Fern Cave. She uses her little camera. So sometimes we have to think outside the box on how we're going to do things. And as educators, you saw the film. It talked about the ecosystem. It talked about the animals. It talked about all of that. We talked about the photography aspect, about how we take pictures so that we can protect it and save it for the future because we don't know what's going to happen. And we want to be able to pass it on to future generations. In the film, you saw two people who were second-generation cavers. Their families have passed down the secrets of caving and the secrets of this underground world that they want to protect. And so now, what do we do with that? And this is where it comes down to you. This is your challenge. Because you get to go back to your classrooms, you get to go back to your kids, and you get to help them understand how their little actions that they do, the little things that they're doing, can have such a huge impact on the environment. Because now you've spent the weekend inside a cave. You've seen cave life, you've seen the bats, you've seen crawfish, you've seen, salamanders. And I'm not sure what else y'all may have seen, because there's so much there. Some of y'all may have noticed little things that most people walk right past. But you've also seen the beauty. You've seen some of the beautiful places that are underground. You've experienced the adventure. You've gone underground, you've gone exploring, you've experienced it. And now you've seen the part about the water. You saw the water in Tumbling Rock, you've tested water, and now you've seen how the water moves through the ground. So my challenge to y'all, Remember at the beginning I told you I wanted you to understand and be able to go back to your classrooms? And what did I want y'all to be able to do? What was our objective?
Take away what we've learned and go back and teach our kids and our students.
But a little bit more specific than that. I want y'all to understand how humans impact the environment. At the very beginning we talked about how, you know, your job is to understand how this works and just not just understand it, but to be able to take it back to your classroom and be able to present it to your kids in a way that they'll understand it. Did y'all get that?
No comprendo.
Okay? If you walk in and you start talking over their heads about stuff, I mean, some of you teach elementary school. You start throwing out the word karst, you start throwing out the word limestone, they're going to look at you and go, because they're not going to get it. So it's going to take you getting a piece of limestone. It's going to take you, explaining what that means. It's going to take you pulling up pictures on the internet and putting them on the board. And that's where the challenge comes in. It's because now that you get it, you're an adult. It's easy for us to be able to I got it. And we know how to ask questions when we don't get stuff. But if you're working with third graders and you're trying to teach them science, or you're working with middle school kids, or if you're working with high school kids, middle school and high school kids, sometimes they'll sit there and they don't understand it, and they'll go, I know my kids at school do all the time. And then later on I'm like, hey, tell me, so what'd you learn today? I don't know. Because they didn't really get it. It's the same as when I signed. I could sit here and sign this entire presentation to you in American Sign Language and y'all would be clueless. The kids in your classroom are going to be the same way. Unless you make it real for them. Unless you do the activities. Unless you make it hands-on. Unless you help them see and visualize and process it in a way to where they get it. I mean, that's our job as educators. Is to take what we know and put it into a position where they get it. And this is probably one of the hardest things to teach, is groundwater. And it's because we don't see it. We can't take our kids outside and dig a hole and say, look, there's groundwater. But it's through things like this that you can. And that you can demonstrate how the groundwater moves and how that affects everything. Anybody have any questions?